Good morning again, everybody. You are in the Reenlisting MOC session at 9:55. My name is Brooke Houston, and I am the Regional In-Service Center Director at the University of Montevallo. Today's session is going to be led by Ms. Pamela Hamilton. I will be monitoring the chat and helping answer any of the questions throughout the session. We want to make sure that this is engaging and informative, so please keep your cameras on if you're able so that we can see your faces. The session is being recorded so that if you need to reference it at a later time, you will still have access. And towards the end of the session, I will be dropping links for you to make sure you log your attendance. That is it from me for now, so you can take it away, Pamela.
Great. So happy to have you here today. This is hey, Brooke, do you have access to this document? Can you copy the link and paste it in the chat box so that
I will
they,
type it in the chat. I don't have access,
okay,
but I can type it in there real quick.
that would be great. Well, I'm so glad to have you here today. And I'm going to leave this up just for a second so that she can get that typed in. Or if you have your phone, you can use the QR code to get the presentation. One thing I
Right.
will tell you is that I'm in a classroom where the lights go out. And so if it gets dark here and I have to stand up and move around so that you can see my face, you'll be able to see the presentation the whole time. But I'm so happy that you're here. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. So you are in really good shape. That is an AI generated issue, except for the face. The face is mine. The rest of it, I used AI to put that in. But I am a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, so I do have a camouflage uniform. I just didn't wear it today. I've been in NBCT since 2005. And if you were in the opening session with Dr. Shields, then those early sessions that she started in Gardendale, I was right there with her with those. So we have been doing this for a really long time, and you are in great hands. Because you have the presentation, you've got my email, both my school email and my personal email. I do not check my school email regularly during the summer, but I do check my personal email. So if something comes up and you have a question or you start thinking about things and you want to ask me a question about it, then you have access to that. This is your session. I'm going to give you some information and some tips and tricks, but any questions that you have, you are welcome to interrupt me at any time to ask a question. As we go through, we'll do some interactive things because it's a 2-hour session and I don't want you wandering. I don't want you wandering off on me. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I'm going to tell you your learning outcomes. These are the things that we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to give you an overview of MOC, and then we're going to reconnect with the standards and the core propositions. Then we're going to explore components 1 and 2. I'll give you some things to consider, and then we'll do some brainstorming. My thoughts is that by the end of this session, you should have an idea of what your PGEs for MOC are going to be. So first, let me find out a little bit about you. Can you unmute and tell me, is this your first time in going through MOC? Have you gone through MOC before? And what was your year of certification? Or you can put it in the chat box because I can see the chat box if you prefer to do that.
Good morning. I will go first if you like. Okay, I'm Tanika Peoples. I'm with Birmingham City, and I recently submitted my MOC for the second time. I initially certified in 2007. So I just submitted in May, and I'm waiting for that important announcement in December. And I also support the UAB Region 5 for MOC in their support program. And it's been a pleasure. So I'm here to learn how to encourage and support my fellow National Board certified teachers in the MOC process.
Oh, Tamika, I love that. Okay. And then I've got some in the chat. I've got some in the chat box. So let me take a look at this. All right. So Tyler, this is your first time doing MOC. And oh gosh, we got a lot of first timers. And then Lisa, this is your first time with MOC. Angie. And then Amy. Well, that sounds wonderful. And Tamika, when we go through at the end, if you want to send me an email where you ask questions or give me suggestions on how to improve, I would love that. And then
Yes.
Ashley.
I'd like to share.
Okay.
Okay. Well, my name is Tamara, and I certified in 2008 in literacy, reading language arts, and I completed it was recertification back in 2018. And so will be my first time under the MOC. And I think this time I will renew every 5 years because it has been every 10 years. And that was awesome. So I have not looked at the information for this time. So I'm not sure if it is the same or if it has changed any as far as what the requirements are.
Okay,
Okay.
that's great. And so when we go through, you're going to see that this process is going to be a little more streamlined than what you did before.
In
And so,
2018.
so
Okay.
you're in really good shape. Okay, is there anybody else who wants to share before we get started? Angie says that she can't get into the presentation, so could you re-put that?
Yeah, I'm working on that link.
Okay, thank you so much.
I try, I call myself typing what was on your first slide, but I'm not able to access it through that. I may have made a typo, but we're working on getting it in there.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So inside the document, inside this presentation, I have given you a link to every single piece of information that you would need. So the guide and the everything that includes the instructions, the connection to the content standards. So everything that you'll need as your resources, you're going to have that in this document so that you don't have to look through look at a bunch of different places. So for most of you, this is going to be your first opportunity to go through MOC, and you're going to find it as I'm going to try to make it as a comforting and encouraging experience as I can. But here is what the calendar looks like. So one of the things that I need to know about MOC is that all the documents that you need to get started are already available to you. That even though you have to pay in February if you go through MOC this year, that everything that you need is already available. So you can go ahead and get started on everything that you need to do right now. So we're going to do a little myth versus facts since there's so many of you who are going through for the first time. So for myth number one, and I'm going to move this off to the side for me, the intensity and amount of work for MOC is the same of initial certification. And the fact is that it's only around an average of 53 hours. Instead of all those hours, I actually know somebody who completed it in a weekend in 24 hours. That is not my jam, but it is a lot less intense than original certification is. And even for those of you who have went through certification or have went through recertification, it is even not as intense as that. It's only about 53 hours. The second myth is that it will be extremely challenging to be successful at MOC. And I want to encourage you because 9 out of 10 MBCs successfully complete MOC. And what I know is that the people that I know that have not successfully completed MOC, it was a logistical thing. Like their students were not the right age, or they were not teaching in their original certification era. It was something, or they didn't answer the prompts, something small that is definitely something correctable. Myth number 3, the process is intense as original certification, and that is absolutely not the fact. So MOC, it's not the same as recertification or going through certification. It's going to be on how you grow and how you've grown and how you positively impact student learning. So it looks all about your process and not about your initial certification. And actually, it looks completely different than initial certification, because an initial certification, it gave you very straightforward things. We want this in this profile. We want this, and we want you to do specifically this. Well, the biggest challenge for MOC is that it's wide open, is that because it is such a personal process that your certification area really doesn't matter when you talk about networking, because everybody's growth is going to look a little bit different. And so you can really collaborate with anybody else who's going through the MOC process, even if they're not in your certification area, because the only time that the certification area is going to come up is in the videotaping. For myth number 4, if you are not in the classroom, and for a lot of teachers, even though Dr. Shields said in her presentation that a lot of MBCTs stay in the classroom, well, a lot of them do not, because they learned so much from the process, they've taken over leadership roles. And so many of the people who go through MOC are not currently in the classroom. And so in those cases, you'll need to borrow a classroom, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. All right, once an MBC, always an MBCT. I'm sorry to tell you that the fact is, if you let your certification expire, you won't be able to pursue MBCT. You will have to go through the entire process all over again, which I would not want. I would want to put in the 53 hours and go ahead and get the MOC knocked out. And even like I renewed, I think this is my 4th time renewing for MOC or for recertification. And I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be retired before the next time, but I love it, and I love the title, and I love everything about the growth. So I went ahead and did my MOC. Plus, I can tell you, it's not going to be a big deal. you're going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. But because you're an MBCT, you are going to be very stressed out about this process. But this is not an FBI investigation. You are already an MBCT. They just want to make sure that you are still doing the things that you did in your original certification, that title that goes behind your name for for MBCT, that it still means something to you and that you're still doing those same practices. All right, so because so many of you, this is your first time doing maintenance of certificate, I'm going to go over initial certification versus maintenance of certificate. And even those of you who have not done MOC, but have gone through the recertification process, this is what it looks like. So in initial, you had those 4 components. For maintenance, you only have 2. You have 2 things that you have to do. And for the initial certification, your evidence had to be clear and convincing evidence. For this one, it just has to be sufficient. You have to show sufficient evidence that you are still maintaining your process. For the initial, the scoring was numerical, and you had to get a certain number to pass. For here, it's pass or fail. And you can't bank anything if you don't pass the first time, which is highly unlikely. Then you have to do the whole thing over again. There is no assessment center, which for me was the most stressful thing about certification, because it was the only thing that you didn't know what was going to be on it. But for maintenance, there's no assessment center. And then the investment in the process. So it was a pretty hefty investment for that initial certification. It's almost $2,000. For this one, it's $500 and about 53 hours. So, what are some of the reasons why you are pursuing your maintenance of certificate? And there is no wrong answer. You can type it in the chat box, or you can unmute and talk out loud. Either one is fine by me. I just have to find my chat. Oh, no
Well,
joke. Like that supplement is, I mean, that's Christmas for me every single year.
yes, the supplement. The supplement, and I work with candidates in Birmingham City Schools and with the Regional In-Service Center. So I truly enjoy supporting candidates. I work in professional development, and so we're always pushing teachers for certification. So it's a lot, it's a huge part of my professionalism and my identity as a growing, professional. Really, I've been one for a long time. And like you, I'm gonna remain one as long as I'm not retired.
Yeah.
So I'll never let it lapse, just like I'll never let my teaching certification lapse.
I love that. And I love what Tyler says here about it's the best professional development he's experienced. I have a doctorate, I have a master's degree. And even beyond all of those things, I've gotten the most out of being an MBCT. And I'm here to tell you that this MOC really, for me personally, to look at the work that I have done and put it on paper and to see and reflect on my growth, it's moving to me. I mean, it is inspired. I mean, look at me. Look what I did. Look who I am. And so I love that. And Lisa, I'm sorry to tell you that it is going to be a challenge, but not as much of a challenge as the initial certification.
Pamela, I was just going to add, I like you. I really appreciate the National Board certification. It has been a much more rewarding experience for me than even the doctorate.
Mhm.
So I too am proud of the fact that, we all achieved that certification. And I think I just saw in the chat where Amy said she enjoyed reading the standards. And for me, since my initial certification in 2007, of course, the standards have changed and merged slightly. I really enjoyed through the maintenance of certification process reading those standards. They were awesome. And I think National Board did an awesome job of doing that slight revision to the standards. But that was a rewarding aspect of the MOC as well.
Yeah, I love that. That looking at the standards allows you to really concentrate on what's important. What are the important things that I need to do in the classroom? What are the things that not just things that I love to teach, but things that promote student learning and help the students grow and help me to grow as a learner. This is my 30th year of teaching, and I'm still growing and learning. And I think that's the thing about MOC. Some people will, I don't know, they're like, oh my gosh, every 5 years, that is a lot. Have I grown a lot in 5 years? And to be able to sit back and say, well, I really have grown a lot in 5 years, and I'm a different person than I was before, or I have, I've been able to meet this challenge or overcome this challenge, and I still look for ways in my teaching practice to be fresh and to be new. Okay, so what I came up with on my list was one, which some of you mentioned, was growth, is that it's really designed to celebrate your growth and who you have transformed in over the last 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or 20 or even 30 years. Just to really look back and see who you are as a teacher is it's amazing because we never get to do that. We never get to look at our practice outside of national boards and say, I'm really good at this. And I see this a lot, and I'll put this you'll see it in the presentation later, that the biggest challenge with MOC is that a mindset of what teachers have in general is that even when I introduce myself, to like, I'll meet someone from my husband's company and they'll ask, oh, well, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm just a teacher. Well, I'm not just a teacher. I am a national board certified. That gives me a little chill when I say that. I'm a national board certified teacher. I'm just not a regular teacher. I'm a national board certified teacher. And so that's the one thing that makes the process hard for MOC, is that we don't look at ourselves and say, I'm amazing. I'm great. I'm so good at this. I am an excellent teacher. Well, the maintenance of certificate, you have to do that. You have to look at your process and say, I'm really good at this. You spend a lot of time patting yourself on the back with MOC, which is really nice because we never do that. We always just think, I just go to the classroom and I just teach. You don't. You transform lives, right? That's what you do. Two, impact. Reflect on your impact on student learning. And after looking at those results from what Dr. Shields said, MBCTs are making a huge impact on student learning every single day. Every moment that you decide to keep your certification or to stay in the classroom or to mentor other teachers, you're impacting the learning of students in Alabama. Title. So I love having the little MBCT after my name. It's more important than my doctorate. All right, receiving the continued salary stipends for your expertise. And I love that because That's what the stipend is that you are not getting a stipend because you're an MBCT. You're getting a stipend because your expertise entitles you to that stipend. That's the difference, is that it's not money for the because you're an MBCT. It's money because what that title of MBCT means. Does that make sense? And then maintaining your licensure, and then leadership opportunities for a lot of teachers being an MBCT and maintaining their certificate. And is it Quamilla? Quamili? Unmute for a second and tell me how to pronounce that. We'll give her just a second to figure that out. Okay, maintenance certificate is not recertifying. One, you have an active status. You are just keeping your certificate active, not recertifying. It's almost like renewing your passports or renewing your driver's license. You're just keeping your active status. You're already considered to be an MBCT. So you're not recertifying. You're just showing that you're still keeping up with the process. Professional growth, it measures how you as an MBCT has grown in your professional experience and how that growth focuses on student learning and impacting positively student learning. That's what it looks like. And that's what makes it so personal. And then evidence of practice. You're just providing evidence of what you do, that you are still a national board certified teacher, that you still use the standards, that you still use the architecture of accomplished teaching, and that you still invest in those 5 core propositions. And I just want you to read that statement. You're an MBCT already, right? You are already an MBCT. So now you're just showing I'm still doing the things that gave me that title in the first place. All right, so some vocabulary for you. MOC is maintenance of certificate. You're just maintaining your certificate. A PGE, and I'll say PGE about a bazillion and 72 times in this presentation. It's your professional growth experience. It's something new that you've learned that has a direct or indirect impact positively on student learning. So what is your professional growth experience? And we'll talk more about that, and I'll give you some ideas on what that could be. And then your SOP, your samples of products. These are just documents that if you say, I did this, this is just shows, and here's my evidence for that, right? This is what I'm using to show that what I say in my paper is true. All right, you're going to love the evaluation portion of the MOC because it's holistic. Like in the initial certification, all your components were shipped off all over the place. One person actually 2 people from your certification area are the people who are reading your document. That means that they understand the language of, for me, I'm science, so they understand the language of science teaching. And so they understand everything about the content area that they're reading. And then you receive a decision. It's really, what I found out was every time that I've maintained is that you find out first that maintenance of certificate, our results usually come in before certification, and that it'll either be pass or fail. What happens is that your heart is beating very fast and you log onto the computer and a big firework comes up and says, congratulations. Feedback and growth. All right, if your certification is not maintained, which is extremely highly unlikely, they will tell you, they give you general feedback on what you could do to make it a little bit stronger. And that the evaluation focuses on your growth and just your growth. So some couple of non-negotiables for MOC is one of your components has to be in your original certificate area. Your license has to be current. And then for administration, make sure that you go into your profile and update your MBCT status if you've changed schools, if you've changed addresses, etc. And then just meet the registration and payment and submission deadlines. So most of you are, except for one or maybe two of you, you're getting ready to do this MOC for the first time. And so you should be collecting evidence. And even though I just went through MOC last year, I already have a folder. And I keep in that folder my certificates. If I get an email from a student or a parent or some kind of congratulations, or I win an award or get a grant or any of those things, I keep that in a folder. If it's a picture, I will take a screenshot of it and put it in the folder, and it's just labeled MOC 2030 or MOC, I can't remember how I named it, but I'm already collecting evidence. And that's what you're doing, is that you just collect evidence. You can look at your Power School, the things that you have completed in the last few years, and things that you have learned that are new programs that the school have went through, new ideas that you've used in your classroom, or new technologies that you've implemented. So your first chance to apply for MOC is in year 4. And what I love about MOC is that you have 2 chances. So you have your first chance to maintain your certificate. And then if that doesn't work, then you have a second chance. But what the wonderful thing about that is that your certificate, even if you do your maintenance of certificate in the first year, in year number 4, when you get your new certificate, it goes through whatever your, like if it was 2020 for me, 2025, and I renewed in 2024, my certificate still goes all the way into 2030. So it doesn't go 10 years from when you submit, it goes 10 years from where your certificate expires. And then in year 5, this is your last chance. Some ways to get started is to reread your standards and the core propositions. And then this is a journey. So just prepare systematically to ensure successful maintenance. So the first thing that you'll want to do, which I'm sure you do I'm sure that you already do, is look at those 5 core propositions. And as MBCTs, this is just part of who we are. So when you look at those 5 core propositions, it's just a part of what it means to be an MBCT. So we're going to do I'm going to give you the overview for this. I'm going to take a sip of water. So this is maintenance of certificate at a glance. So this is in this little tiny screen, in this little tiny section right here, is everything that you need to do to be successful at MOC. So you have 2 components, component 1 and component 2. In component 1, you've got 2 PGEs, PGE A and B. And one of those has to be in your original certificate area or relate to your original certificate area. And then you've got work products that go with this. You write out 8 pages of written commentary, and you've got a total of 4 pages of samples of products. That's your evidence that you use. And that's everything for component number 1. You can do 4 pages of PGE and 4 pages of PGB, or 5 pages of one and 3 pages of the other. You can organize it however you would like. And then 4 pages of sample work products. For component 2, you've got a video, and I'll talk about this in detail in a few minutes. But you've got 5 pages of written commentary, and I'll go over all the questions that they're going to ask you in there. And then the 10-minute, up to 10 minutes of video. So let's do a deep dive in component number 1. And then I'm going to open it up for some questions before we go to the next part. So for component number 1, you've got 4 pages of written commentary per PGE, but really you have 8 pages that you can organize however you like. You'll want to submit that on the template because it's the easiest way to go in and then just type into the document. You've got 2 pages of sample products for each one of your PGEs. So that you've got a total of 12 pages. And when you submit them, everything is submitted separately. Like you'll submit component 1, and then you'll submit in a PDF your samples of work products. So I'm going to go over just a little bit more of this, and then I'm going to open this up to some questions. So here's your mission. So for your PGEs, it needs to be new learning, or something that's maybe something that you started a few years ago and you got to be an expert at it now. Or it could be something brand new that you've had to learn about because of your district. You're going to include the steps and milestones that you took and goals that you achieved along your way, your influence inside and outside of the classroom. And the biggest one is direct or indirect impact on student learning. And then one of your PGs has to be designed as a lesson in your original certificate. And so it needs to tie to your original certificate, but the lesson that you do, let me see if I can put this in a way that won't be crazy. Like this year, I have started doing, or a few years back, I started doing this thing called the modern classroom, where the classroom, it's almost like a flipped classroom. So in one of my PGEs was about just improving ways to improve student learning. And one of the things that I talked about in my PGE was becoming a self-paced classroom. So in my video, the lesson content that I did was a science lesson, but it was a self-paced lesson. So every student wasn't doing the same thing. So it's very broad on how your implementation of your original certificate is embedded in your PGE. So you'll talk about a lot of different things, and then in component 2, you'll really focus on that, and we'll talk more about that anyway. And then select PGEs and allow you to analyze your accomplishments. In this document, I've given you a checklist, and this checklist is directly tied to the rubric. So this isn't mine. This comes from national boards, so that you have a document where you can make sure that you're meeting each one of these. And I'll show you how that ties in. So the first thing that's going to ask you in your written commentary, these are your questions that you're going to ask. Provide the professional context of the situation. So the professional context is like the backstory. Is like you are teaching in an urban classroom, or for years you have been teaching 5th grade, but now you have moved to 6th grade, or you were teaching, you were in the classroom, but now you're an instructional leader. So it's just the backstory that tells the need that you're going to address. So because I'm in this new situation, I needed to learn this content. Or because many of our students were not successful in understanding this concept, I needed to do this. That's your first question. Number 2 is identify the PGE. What are you talking about in your PGE? So, is it helping students grow in language acquisition? Is it helping students improve their test scores? Is it helping students improve their ACT scores? What is it what are you going to talk about in this PGE? Explain how you deepened your certificate area or your pedagogy skills. Analyze your PGEs as related to how they positively impact student learning. And then reflect on your process. These are the requirements in your PGEs. These are not word for word from the prompts, but they're pretty close. So you've got these 5 prompts that you have to answer, and this is what they are. Somewhere in those 2 PGEs, you've also got to address how you've effectively integrated technology. That's the lights going on. How you ensure equity and promote diversity in the classroom. Explain how you've collaborated with your colleagues. And then in the broader context of your PGE, analyze patterns or themes. What do you notice about yourself and how you've grown over the years? So I'm gonna show you this piece of it, just a broad thing of different aspects of what a PGE could be. And then we're going to talk about, so as I'm doing this piece, I want you to be thinking about where have you grown most in the last 5 years? And let's consider what some of your PGEs might be, right? Or what you might be thinking about for your PGEs. So the first thing that I want you to notice is in these examples, they're very broad. So I want you to consider your professional growth experience, your PGE, as a bucket. And in this bucket are lots of different things. So let's talk about maybe leadership. So let's say that you decide to use your leadership experiences as one of your PGEs. Well, think about all the different ways that you lead. What mentoring do you do? What ways do you use? Do you use social media to chat with people who are in a given group? Do you present at conferences? Have you published something? All of those things go in that one bucket. And when you write about your PGE, you're not talking about one specific thing, but you're talking about lots of different things that go in the same growth experience. So when I did, like, my major growth was in the modern classroom, right? Having this self-paced learning in my classroom. But that wasn't the only thing that I talked about in that PGE. I talked about all kinds of different ways that I work on improving student learning or help students to be more successful. So every kind of technology, anywhere that I did professional learning or looked at data analysis, all those things I put in the same bucket. So even if you've gone through one initiative, or even if you have one focus in your school. Your PGE is going to be a broader idea that goes into. All right, so all of these are, I can't remember what I have on the next screen. All right. So given that, let's talk about where have you grown most in the last 5 years as a learner? So let's do learner first, and you can, to get my chat box up, which you know I have a problem with that. So go ahead and put in the chat while I'm trying to find it, or you can unmute. And when you unmute, say your name so I know who's talking, because I only have part of your pictures here. And tell me where are your biggest growths? Where have you learned the most in the last 5 years? Okay, so Lisa, when you say ACT math prep, what are some other, I want you to think about for your PGE, what are some other things that go along with that ACT math prep? So as you were trying to, that even though this ACT math prep is your focus, and I used ACT in mine the last time and I did it too, but I used a broader focus. So what are all the things that surround that ACT math prep? What other things did you do that go with that? Tyler, are you talking about for differentiation, leading at conferences or mentoring, book studies, Facebook groups? So, Amy, when you think about this learning that you've done, boy, that Anxious Generation, what a great book that was. In your PGE, what other things besides, even though this book is going to be your focus, what other things went into the bucket of handling behaviors in the classroom? Tyler, is this mentoring at your school, or is this mentoring through UAB or an undergraduate program? Is this mentoring within your department? Is it school-wide?
Hey, Pamela. Obviously, a lot goes into a PG. So, I finished an EDS. I'm finishing up my doctorate right now. Both of them have had components of differentiation. So, I have like that aspect of it. But part of those programs involved research within my building. I've been mentoring college students from Auburn University as well as new teachers as they've come in. My building is extremely traditional. So, I've also been helping veteran teachers like kind of, change their thinking a little bit and put in some new methods that meet. Our area, we are doubling our special ed students and our ELs this year. Like we are exponentially growing. So That was definitely a need for us. So yeah, there's lots of components that go into it.
Yeah, and when you're thinking about your PGE, those are all the things that you'll want to put in, that you'll want to put in together. Okay, so that is a learner. So where you learned most as a learner, and then where have you grown most as a leader? And you can put it in the chat box or you can unmute. Lisa, you want to use those statistics as one of your sample of product, because that's really strong evidence. I know this is a lot, and if it's not your jam, like for me, I'm a muller. I like to think about things for a second. Like I like to take in all the information and then let it sit and marinate on it, and then start thinking about the process. So some of you might be like me, where this is a lot to think about, and that you really want to just kind of consume yeah, you want to reflect on what you're doing. And what is really helpful with that is that if you'll, like, while we're talking today, just start writing some things down that you've done. I've learned this. I have become an expert in this. If you have really become passionate about AI and have found ways to use that in your classroom, then that could be a component. Or um, any of the things that you have done, whether they're big or small, just write them down. And you can write them on paper, or you can start a document and just write down every single thing that you have either done as a learner or as a leader. And then just start taking those things and grouping them together. All of these things go together. All of these things go together. I will tell you this, is that if you are an MBCT, which you are going to have way more things that you've done than you can possibly write about. I had to call, like, I had a whole list of things, and I put a bunch of things in my writing that I just had to cut out because um I I just had too many things, and you're going to have too many things. And so by writing them down, it helps you to organize them so you can see these things go together and these things go together. That's why in the first question where it asks you to name your PGE, it's to help you so that when you start writing, everything that you write about is going to be specifically dealing with that topic, because it's easy to get with MOC to get in a rabbit hole and you start talking about differentiated instruction, and then you start talking about mentoring and classes and all these different types of differentiated instruction that you go through, that some of the things will just have to, they'll just have to go, because you're not just you're not just a teacher, you're an MBCT. And so you do a lot of things. And this is not going to be a dissertation. This is going to be an 8-page document. And so you will not be able to talk about all of the things that you've done. And then how did your growth progress? like, where did it start in the last 5 years when we're looking at your, let me go back to, Lisa with her ACT prep. Where did that start? You know, what was the need for that? And then what were all the things that you had to learn? And then all the things that you did with students to help them become more successful. So you're going to reflect on that process and think about all the steps that you've taken to do that. And then the direct impact on student learning, or the indirect impact of student learning, and the things that you talk about. Use students' names when you're talking about. For like, not be a great word, but Julie, okay. At the beginning of the year, Julie, who was an English language learner, she didn't speak much in class, or she wouldn't raise her hand, or she wasn't completing assignments. But by January or February or March, she had done this, this, and this. And because I know that she needed this, these are the things that I did to accomplish this. Does that make sense? This is the hardest part, is for the PGEs. And then in what ways have you have to talk about technology in somewhere in your PGEs. You can talk about it in both of them, but in what ways have you incorporated technology? And technology is really, it's broad, like not just tools, but apps that you've used or new ways of learning. And I'm just looking in the chat box. And then reflect on your process. Because I know that my students are using AI. I wanted to learn how to use it so that I could be more responsive to helping them use that in ethical ways. Lisa, that is interesting. Because the research shows that paper and pencil is the best. And then some other things like leadership, and I think this is what Tyler was talking about, is supporting your colleagues. So think about leadership roles and efforts that you've taken. And as you start writing down all the things that you've did and all the ways that you have had a leadership role, etc., you'll see that some of these leadership roles will go with this PGE, and some of your leadership roles will go with this PGE. And then look at your growth, your new skills, courses you've learned, certifications. And your parents and community engagement. And my lights went out again. Okay, so that's a lot. So this is component number 1. And so the first thing that you have to do for component number 1 is that you have to decide your PGEs. That you cannot do, I mean, you can look at your standards, You can go over the 5 core propositions, but you cannot do anything for your writing until you decide what your PGEs are. It's just how it is. And I will tell you that it is the hardest, it's the hardest part, is trying to figure out what aspect of my learning and my growth do I want to talk about? And there'll be lots of things. So you have to choose. And so you're going to ask me, you're going to say, can I do this, XYZ? And I will say, can you show impact on student learning? And you will say yes. And I will say, that sounds great. Because that's how your PGE is. It's extremely personal. It's what have you done to grow in the last 5 years? And some of it are in the last, mostly in the last 5 years. And nobody can tell you what your PGEs are. You have to just decide those for yourself. And you don't want to wait. You want to go ahead and get those knocked down and say, I'm going to talk about this, or these are my biggest areas of growth, or this is where I have a biggest passion. That even though you might be doing differentiated instruction or ACT or mentoring, where is your passion? Is your passion with new teachers or veterans, or where's your passion at? Because that's probably where you're going to spend the most of your time. So here's what I need to know. Do you want to mull on this a little bit more and then circle back to talking about your individual PGEs at the end? Or would you like to go ahead and start hashing some of those out? Let me read this chat box. Yeah, Lisa, definitely you can use that. But is there a way to tie that into something bigger, not just teaching geometry for the first time? Or because you are teaching geometry for the first time, you know you needed to do this, and this. And so all the things that go into teaching geometry for the first time. Or because you knew you had to teach geometry this year, you've done this, and this. Try to make it broad but focused, that all of it is about some aspect of, and then in your PG, you also have to talk about how your teaching impacts student learning. So not just how you grew as you're growing as a learner, but also how your learning is going to impact the students. So what I'm hearing or not hearing is that you are more of a muller and that you want to think about this for a second. Or maybe you're writing some things down and so we're going to circle back to this in a second. So let me show you what these, make this smaller. Some samples of work products could be. Student work. Visual evidence like photographs. test scores, attendance rates, graphs, and charts. Feedback, so notes that have been written to you by faculty, staff, families, etc. Any kind of data analysis. Published work, projects, surveys that you've given after you've given a presentation. Any of those things can be samples of work products. What's not a great sample of product are certificates, like certificates of attendance, etc. And all of these come from the MOC instructions, page number 10. So it can be anything. On mine, I used, I had some graphs and charts that I used. From some of it, I used a snippet of student work. Like, instead of, you've only got 2 pages, and so you can't show everything. So I would just do a screenshot of a piece of it and add a piece of this, and then a piece of this, and then a piece of this. And then when I wrote in my paper, just talk about it. So like, like I would talk about something in my paper, and then next to that, comma or parentheses, SOP 1, SOP 2, SOP 3, SOP 4, etc. And then there's a checklist so that you can see if your written commentary has everything in it that they're going to look at on your grading rubric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and dive into component number 2, and we're going to talk about that. And then we'll circle back to your PGEs so that you can talk to me about what you're thinking about for your PGEs if you want. I'm not the boss of you, so you can do whatever you want. Okay, so component number 2, you've got 5 pages of written commentary, and you've got to submit that on the template, and you want to use the template anyway, because you'll save it as a document and it'll be much easier to use. And then up to 10-minute video. Does your video have to be 10 minutes? No. Can my video be 8 minutes? Yes. And you can segment it up to 3 times. So you can do 2 and 4 or 3, 3 and 3, however you'd like to do it. For component number 2, it has to be in your original certificate area. So you're teaching a math class or an English class or a computer science class or whatever it is, it has to be in your original certificate area. It has to be the recording window no earlier than September 1st, the year prior to your first MOC eligibility. So you can start recording when you get back to school. The videotape has to be time-stamped, or I did not remember to do that. So I just did the principal signed or assistant principal signed and a citation form, which I have a lot of trouble saying that word. And then the evidence shows interaction, reactions, and active engagement of learning. So what you'll want to see in the video is discourse. You talking to the students and the students talking to each other. And then I've given you a video graphic organizer. And then here are the prompts. How has your learning or professional growth as described in the PGE been applied in this lesson? All right, so like for one of my PGEs, I talked about in improving student learning. And I talked about all the different ways that I improve student learning. But for this video, I only talked about using the self-paced classroom. What were your goals for the lesson and how do they fit into the broader context? And why writing these goals is important is because as your students meet goals in the video, like maybe one of your goals was for them to understand specific geometry concept. And so when the student shows you in the video that they have accomplished this, you could say this, thus meeting goal number one. And how do they fit into the broader context of learning? So how does this lesson tie into everything else? Was this the first lesson? Is this the middle lesson? Is this the culminating lesson? That's all that it wants to know is where does this fit into the continuum of the unit? Fairness and equity. How did you ensure fairness and equity and promote appreciation? So when you called on students or when you gave your lessons, were your lessons in the class differentiated so that it could meet the needs of students at different levels? Because you know that the majority of your students are visual learners, that you included a graph or a chart or a picture, things like that. Content knowledge, how does the video reflect your specific content knowledge? This question is a trick question because it's just making sure that you are in your certificate area. So answer that question, but you don't have to spend a lot of time on it because it's this is how it shows my content knowledge. This is how it fits into my original certificate area. Impact and evidence of student learning, examples from the video, and then reflection and growth. Okay, so you have 5 pages, right? And you have to answer these 6 prompts on those 5 pages. So your focus is going to be on 5 and 6. Right? Most of your writing is probably going to be in 3, 5, and 6. That you'll talk a little bit about this, how's it been applied to that lesson. That's a paragraph. Goals and content is probably a paragraph. Content knowledge, paragraph or less. So what, 1 page for these 3, and you've got 4 more pages, which should be this and this and this. This is your rubric for your MOC. So notice that it's directly tied to the prompts. So identifies and addresses, excuse me, relevant needs of students, community, or yourself. So if you answered the prompt, then you answered this question. Deepened your certificate or pedagogy. If you answered the prompt, then you met this in your evaluation. Integrates technology. Involves others in your growth. All of these, every single thing that you see on here is from the prompts. So when you answer the prompts, you are meeting the requirements of the you're meeting the requirements of the rubric. And in here, I provided you a MOC checklist that's directly off the website. So that's PGE, that's component 1 and component 2. So we're going to talk about some other things that you need to think about in your writing. There are 3 types of writing. There is descriptive, there's analytical, and there's reflective writing. So what's going to happen and I've read hundreds of papers, this is what's going to happen, is that you are going to write your paper. And when you write your paper, you are going to be mostly describing, right? That's what you'll want to do. I did this, and I did this. But that's not what a national board is asking you to do. It's asking you to analyze and reflect. So the analytical piece of it is, why did you do this? Is I did, because I know this about my students, I did this, and this is what I learned from it. So whenever you're talking about anything whenever you're writing in your paper, it's, I did this because, or I did this because I know this. This is the significance of why I did this. And then if you're going to do things differently, what would you have done differently? As I think about that lesson, or as I think about this student, or as I think about, I know next year this is what I'll do differently, or what I did differently the next day. So when you write, describe less. This will be the smallest piece of it. More important, explain why you did it and how it impacts student learning. And then reflect on the process. And these are what, this is from Bobby Faulkner's book. I did this, and this was significant because I know blank about students. I planned, provided, organized, taught, etc., which shows. All of these are writing prompts that I included in here so that you can use that in your analytical writing. And then reflection in the future. A key process was an area of growth. My next step is, if I had to do it again. Because and therefore are going to be 2 of the most important words that you use in your writing. And then this is directly from national boards to give you some evidence of ways to write. So look, I know I keep talking about the ACT because it's just a measurable thing to me. So students have grown. Like she said, students grew most in math. Well, by how much did they grow? And did they grow more in your class than they did in other teachers' classes? And when you look at the ACT data, by how many points did the students grow from this year to this year to this year? That is strong evidence. And then if you're talking about differentiation, how did you differentiate your lesson? And why did you do it that way? Are more your students visual learners, auditory learners? Do some of your students have a language need? Okay, I'm going to come back to the standards in just a second. So do you have any questions so far? Is there anything that you want to talk about? Is there anything that you're wondering? I'm sorry, I have a hard time with this chat box. So I pulled up the chat box. You can talk to me in there, or you can unmute. Is there anything that you're wondering? I'm gonna plug in my computer. All right, any questions about component 1 or component 2? I know, Tyler, it's the hardest thing. And I understand that this is a lot. Okay, so standards. Those standards are your best friend in your writing. It's a lot. It is just a lot because you have to sit and reflect so much on who you are as an educator. And we really just don't have a lot of time to do that. We get to school and our needs are never at the top of the list. The needs of the students. What do I need today to help my students be successful? What do I need to do to make sure that I have everything ready for every student? We never stop and look at ourselves and what we need or what we need for ourselves or what excellent things that we're doing. We're always looking forward and always looking at the kids. And so that's what makes this process really hard, is that you have to spend time thinking about yourself and thinking about your practice, which is difficult. Okay, this is an excerpt from the early childhood generalist standards. And so at the bottom, I give you so here's the standards. And then I gave you prompts at the bottom that help you use the standards in your writing. So when I was writing, I would write the whole thing out. You can do whatever you want. I'm not the boss of you. But I would write about something. And then I would look at the standards and use language of the standards in my writing. So the assessor knew I know my standards. Because even when I'm teaching, I know what my standards are, but I don't always know the language of the standards. And so by going back to the standards, it allowed me to strengthen my writing. And there's that because again, because, and for example. And one of the things that make your writing even stronger is when you use for example or for instance. Because that's the analysis piece of it. So like if you were just writing descriptively, I move students to the next level of learning. Well, that doesn't tell the assessor very much. But to move the students to the next, I did this. And I did it because I know this piece of information. And because of that, this student performed 4 points higher than they usually do, or they were more engaged in classroom, or they were a mentor to the other students in the classroom. So that's how you can use your standards for your writing. Fairness and equity. Fairness is mostly making a bias-free environment for all of our students. And even though we want to think that we are not biased in our teaching, it's by reflecting on yourself and things that you do in the classroom or structures that you have in the classroom that allow for your instruction to be fair and equitable. And I give you a couple of examples, like using rubrics and exemplars, setting high standards for every student, and then providing access. How do you differentiate for the different learning modalities? How did you arrange your classroom in a way that allows students to communicate with each other and to communicate with you? Amy, that's exactly right. Just write down everything. And then it'll be easier to pull out your theme for your PGE. All of these things. And it'll make your writing so much easier. And it will make your evidence a lot easier because you'll have a lot of things to pull from. And it's like I said, it's not an FBI interrogation. They just want, you said this in your paper, what's your evidence of that? Well, here it is right here. And then equity in practice, making sure everyone, not just the student who's the loudest or the most eager, is the one who always gets the attention. And then recognizing things, preconceptions that we have about students that can distort your relationships with them. Avoiding favoritism. How you advocate for students. And that you use the diversity of your students as an advantage in the classroom. All right, AI has been the topic of late. So let's go over some of the acceptable use for AI. This comes straight out of the guide for MOC. AI cannot write any part of your written commentary or complete any of your forms. You can use AI for spell checking and for grammar purposes. It can help you generate assessments or instructional materials. But you have to disclose that, anything that's AI generated. And then it would be unethical for AI to produce work samples for you. Just use your own fabulous work samples. All right, submission. So we're all the way to submission, which seems like it's very far away, but it is not. It's right around the corner. So for your page setup, you've got to have 1-inch margins. I remember when I did my initial certification that I did I did kerning, like I made it so that the letters were closer together so I could fit more on the page. But apparently they've caught on to that, so you're not allowed to do that anymore. So make sure that you have to use 11 point, and it'll be double spaced. You can use bold and italics for emphasis. The first time you use abbreviations, spell it out. And then everything is submitted in a PDF. And then this is your reference for that. When you save your PGE, when you're writing, when you save it to your computer as you're writing, save it without any special characters, because you won't be able to submit it in the final window if it has special characters in it. You have to remove student names, adult last names from all documentation. And this is where they really trust you. Like if you have a certificate from somewhere, almost everything is going to be blocked out. And so they trust you, and they trust that you say and do what you said you did. Okay, so when I went into national boards for the first time, it was so confusing trying to figure out where everything was or what I was supposed to do. So go into your national board account, and it says complete your portfolio submission. That just scared the daylights out of me. I don't want to complete it. I want to start it. And so it was a little confusing on how to get started once you went in there. And then here are these are the password requirements for your national board account. 8 characters, 1 number, 1 capital, and 1 lowercase letter. So when you're trying to figure out what your password could possibly be, those are the requirements. And this is what it looks like. So when you go in, here's your maintenance of certificate. You'll just click on the little box and just start it. And then see that your evidence for component 1 is all submitted as 1 PDF. Your video, and then your written commentary, and then the form if you need it. This is everything. Look how small that is. It's almost nothing. Look at 8 pages, 4 pages, 10-minute video, 5 pages. Oh, wait, that's 1 page. 5 pages. That's it. That's all there is to it. Very doable. So when you start to upload your work, and you may not care anything about this now, you'll just choose your files and upload your files. You'll be happy to know that right down here it says, I'm ready to submit for scoring. So you click on that, and then seriously, I'm ready to submit, and then submit. So it gives you a chance to say, maybe I'm not ready to submit. Maybe I want to read it one more time. And then this is the only notification that you get. You don't get anything else. You just get this. Congratulations. You have submitted your portfolio for scoring, and it cannot be changed. If you finish your paper and then you submit it and then you think, oh goodness, there's something I need to change, it's $250. So make sure that you want to submit it. And then here are your next steps. Update your profile, register and pay. Do not do that until the last second. Save your money until you absolutely have to spend it. Fill out that third-party release form. Even as an MOC, you want to do that because if there becomes scholarships or money available through private funding, you'll get access to that. Download your materials, read your standards, and then listen to me. So at the beginning of the year, students are signing 972 papers. So just put your release forms on in there with everything else that they have to sign. Go ahead and get those in all your other documentation. And then that way at the beginning of the year, it's done and you don't have to mess with it. And then if you need to contact students, like sometimes I'll have some of my parents of students with special needs that will be a little resistant to signing the release form. And so I'll just talk to them. Or at open house, I'll say, listen, I am doing my national boards. I need to have a video. It is not about your student. It is about me. But because your student is in my class, I need this form from them. And that usually allows you to handle any problems that you might have with gaining your forms. If for some reason you don't get a form from a student, it's not a big deal. You'll just set that student off to the side or place them so that they're not in the video on the day that you're taping. And that happens sometimes. And then here are my top 10 tips for successful MOC completion. Read the instructions. Read the instructions and answer the prompts. Just answer the prompts. Number 9, review the standards for your certificate. If you, it is helpful to have them available to you so that you can highlight and use words from the standards in your writing. And then determine your PGEs. You have to figure out what your PGEs are. You cannot do anything until you know what your PGEs are. And it's a lot, and I know it's hard because you're just thinking, what are all the things that I do? But you do a lot of things, and it doesn't matter if it's a big thing or it's a small thing. All those small things add up to big things and gives you a lot to talk about. Remove just from your vocabulary. You are not just a teacher, you are an MBCT. You are amazing. And so embrace it. I am amazing and I can do this. Write with WWH format. What did I do? Why was it important? How did it impact student learning? And in everything you write about, what did you do? Descriptive. Why was it important? Analytical and reflective. How did it impact student learning? Analytical and reflective. Analyze, don't describe. Focus on analysis of your practice, not just describing it. It's easy to describe. You could write 5 pages, 8 pages, just describing all the wonderful things that you do. But that is not what National Board wants. They want you to think about it and why you did it and why what you did was important. Practice videotaping and practice this early. One, so that students, especially if you have middle school students, they just act crazy in front of the camera. So practice so that they don't know when you're videotaping and when you're not videotaping, so that you get good things. Have someone come in with iPad or a video recorder and just walk around for a few minutes so that they're used to having somebody else in the classroom. Because if you can, have somebody come in and videotape. Read your work aloud. Read your work out loud. So when you're reading, read everything out loud to make sure that it makes sense in what you're talking about. And number two, it helps you process. So like when students in your classroom are learning, whenever I have a student who is struggling with what the question is asking, I'll say, read this to me out. I don't understand this. Well, read it out loud to me. And then they read it out loud. They're like, oh, I get it now. So read your work out loud. It will help you process and help you figure out, well, that's not what I meant at all. Keep working. Consistency is the key. Like set aside a specific amount of time. I'm going to work for 15 minutes. I'm going to work for 30 minutes. And then at the end of the 30 minutes or 15 minutes, reevaluate. I'm on a roll here, so I'm going to keep writing. At 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week, that's a lot of writing. And then you can do this. You are already an MBCT. And so you already have the title. You just need to show that you've been keeping up to date. All right, questions. Here's the link again for the presentation. And we have about 15, just under 15 minutes that you can ask any questions or get information on anything.
What in the world? On the table there. Say that. Am I the only one? So, how are you supposed to know? Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm hard.
I'm going to jump in real fast before the
Is that the
questions
survey?
start flying. Everybody's kind of putting their brains around all the information they had. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, so much for your expertise today. We are so glad that you were able to share all the things about MOC. I just wanted to remind everyone, if you did not register for Power School, you only need to do that once today, just once for Power School. I've stuck it in the chat, and then I'm going to stick in the chat our virtual day attendance. And this is the one where you will register for this session specifically, because when we get into Power School, we're going to provide hours. And so if we don't see you in multiple sessions, you will only be provided credit for those Google forms that you filled out, if that makes sense. This one is also very important. Once for Power School, and then Google Forms, you need to do it for every session. So you should be prompted by the moderator to take care of that. And I'm going to hush now, Dr. Hamilton, so questions can be asked.
All right, you have 6 minutes. So I'm here for the next 6 minutes to help you in any way I can. There is no stupid question. And if you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. You can unmute, you can type in the box, you can fill out your surveys if you wish. And Tamika, you can tell me anything that I forgot or anything that I could do better. Because I'm a national board certified teacher, I want to know if I need to improve.
Kind of like the I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, but so much better.
I just want you to have confidence that you can do this and that it really seems overwhelming, but it's not. It's something that you can do.
So I don't want to take up the time. I'll try to go very quickly in case someone else has a question. But my original certification was in school counseling. And since my renewal, which thank you so much for helping me with my renewal years ago. Now I am nearing the MOC, so I'm planning ahead, but I'm in a different role. I'm an ESL specialist, which is where I have been since right after my renewal in school counseling. So when I'm just going over all the different things that you're talking about, I see collaboration as being probably the area of leading the most in the last few years, because rather than ESL being a silo, as we've moved from 300 students to over 700, which I know is not big for some larger districts. However, we've actually decreased our team in size. So we're doing a little bit, we have more students with fewer people. So we've moved more from that compliance piece to collaboration. And so like last year, we met with school counselors, we met with instructional coaches, and we set the tone, and we continued working with them to have, like I serve 7 schools, but if I have instructional coaches and school counselors, as well as teachers, we're supporting teachers. But when we're all working together, we're better able to serve the students. Having said that, when it comes to the video, I know I will borrow a class and I will video with a class, but do I need to have, can I have my English learners in a group, or because it's school counseling, do I have to have students who are not English learners in a group and go back and do a lesson on maybe culture, etc.? That's kind of what I'm wondering, is what will that video look like moving from school counseling to ESL? I feel like that I will be okay with what information you've given me today doing the PGE with the learner and leader, but what about the lesson and the video?
I think look at your standards and see how you can use your school counseling standards with your ESL students.
Right. I think I can do that with either social, emotional, academic, or career. I mean, I think I could,
Oh
from
gosh,
the
yes.
standards. But is in my group, what will it look like if it's a group of 14 English learners as opposed to a classroom of 30 students with some English learners and some general education students?
Well, here's what you'll want to think about is is that because the video is more about conversation and dialogue, you might want to consider having a mixed group so that everyone is talking. I'm not sure about your ESL students, but mine tend to be a little bit on the quiet side.
Right.
So it just depends.
Okay.
So with those students, are they more comfortable talking to you and each other when they're all together? Or are they more comfortable talking to you and each other when they're in a larger group?
Right. So I'm not going to keep going. I know someone else may, but my thoughts are, if it's permissible and it does definitely align with where the work is that I'm more focused on right now, the speaking and writing components of access. I have a group of level 4, so they are really speaking, but we're working on that rubric of what does it look like for a level 4 speaker using the academic language, and what does that look like for writing? So I was thinking of doing a lesson on working with a group of level 3 and 4 English learners in the area of the writing domain, language acquisition for the access assessment.
That sounds fine, as long as
Okay.
as long as you can tie it to your
Okay.
original
Right.
content standards,
Perfect.
and as long as you can show student learning, that sounds wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Just real quick, so we might have some lingering questions, but I wanted to make note that it's now 11:45, so the session time has officially ended. And this is your lunch break. We will start back promptly at 1 o'clock, so make sure you decide which session you're going to join us in during that 1 o'clock mark. Dr. Hamilton, if you want to stick around, that is completely up to you. Otherwise, everyone, you are dismissed unless you have a lingering question.
I will be glad to stay. I will stay on as long as you have questions.
I'm going to make you the full host and let you
Okay.
run with any of the questions, only because I've got to go handle something right now. I've got to go make some prints for our in-person sessions tomorrow and then get back on here at 1. So you guys
Thank you
enjoy.
so much.
You are so welcome. It was very enjoyable. I appreciate you. All right. Bye-bye.
You also have my email. So if you think of a question later, like you're mulling right now and you're like, I'm not sure if I have a question and you want to ask me, you're welcome to email me, but just email me my personal account because I won't look at my school account for another couple of weeks. I mean, I do check in on it, but everything important is in my personal email. Yes, the recordings will be available. The one I did a few years ago is somewhere on YouTube, and it's pretty similar because I went back and I looked at, I compared my pages of when I went through MOC to this year just to make sure that all the pages matched up. And so it did, they tweaked a few things. I think it was the AI thing that they added in and a couple of other things, but it's very similar. Thank you, Lisa. If you think of anything, just send me an email. All right. And then we have the live session tomorrow. Are you coming on campus tomorrow? No? You're a virtual girl? All right. So if you think of anything, just email me and I'll respond back to you. Enjoy. It's too far. Where do you live? Oh, what a beautiful place to live. Good for you. Yeah, enjoy your summer. You can start thinking it, just mull over. And if you think of something, just write it down or make a note in your phone. Sometimes when I wake up first thing in the morning, I will have dreams about MOC. And so I'll wake up and I left a binder next to my bed. And when I woke up, I just wrote down things that I thought about. Or sometimes when I wake up, I don't know why the universe does this, but it will give me an idea and I'll just write that down really quickly. So just start writing things down and everything will come together. You are already an MBCT. Do not stress about this. Just think about it, but just figure out those PGEs. Me too. All right, enjoy the rest of your summer. Okay, Ashley, have you got anything for me? Okay, if you think of anything, just email me. I'm going to sign out of this. I'm going to close out this meeting.